Good afternoon and welcome to the November 3rd, 2021 meeting of the PGCPS Board of Education Climate Change Action Plan Focus Work Group. I serve as co-chair of this work group with parent volunteer Joseph Jakuta, representing the climate action parents of Prince George's County. We welcome all work group members, special guests, and the viewers of this meeting, and thank you for your dedication to this climate action work. You can review past recordings of meetings and summaries at pgcps.org/climate. Today, we will be discussing the topic of clean energy, electricity, solar, and we'll continue our discussion from 2 weeks ago on buildings, renovation, and retrofits. Look forward to hearing from all of our guests today. I would like to call this meeting to order and ask for a motion of approval of the agenda for today. Do I have a motion and second?
Motion.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. The agenda is adopted for November 3rd. I would like to move to our minutes from the last meeting that was held on October 20. Could I have a motion and a sec? Oh, my apologies. I did not have you all vote to accept that agenda. I moved too quickly. May I have a vote to approve the agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, moving forward, I'd like a motion and a second on the October 20th meeting minutes. Have a motion and second?
I move to accept the October 20th, 2021 meeting minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. All in favor? Please say aye.
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 Any opposed? It's abstentions or discussion. Jabari, I saw your hand raised. Did you have a comment?
Oh, no, I was just waiting because we're doing a pledge.
Okay, great, thank you. So the minutes are adopted from our last meeting. So now we will move to some of our announcements. And I will now hand that to Joseph Jakuta. But before I do, I want to congratulate Joseph on the work he did with the Aspen Institute's K-12 climate action program in drafting a blog that he kindly bylined with me that is now gone national and possibly international, that is telling the story of our work to date and how we are approaching climate action for a large public school system. So Joseph, I just want to thank you. And I sent that link to the committee members today, and you'll see it on social media. And I encourage everyone to utilize that in your own conversations and with your networks to show off the great work that all of you are doing. Because without all of you, we would not have this great story to tell about doing this work. So, all right, now to you, Joseph.
Thank you. I hope it was important to talk about how we're involving the community at large and communicating. And I think it was important for others to hear so that we can be an example. The first thing I want to mention was that our next meeting is November 17th, and we'll be talking about transportation. Following that, we'll have meetings on December 1st and December 15th. If you are starting to develop questions that haven't quite been answered for whatever reason, I know there's stuff that you didn't think about asking or we didn't quite get to. We want to also start collecting those possibly for the December 15th meeting, because there's going to be things that we didn't quite get to. And so if you want to start collecting those in your notes and then send them along to me so we can compile them and start to get answers, please do. Second up, we have we extended the deadline for submitting responses to the survey. That is now until the 5th of November, which is Friday. So if you haven't gotten a chance to fill it out or share it with your networks, please do. At this point, we've gotten 149 responses, which is fairly good. So we're hearing from different members of the community, but the more voices we hear, the more we can consider them in the final plan. We also wanted to make note that concurrently with our process, the county council is developing a climate action plan for the rest of the county operations, and they are currently having a public comment period now until December the 1st. I'll make sure I drop that link in the chat too. So it's a good opportunity both for us to provide feedback to make sure if there's stuff that needs to be done for the schools, we can provide feedback, but also that we can look at how they're developing their plan, because having consistency is going to be important for ease of implementation in the end. And I think it's a good product, and we even talked a little bit about what the work they're doing as well in that blog entry. So I believe that is all for announcements. Did anyone have any questions? Okay, well, I will turn it back over to Board Member Boozer-Strother, who will kick off the discussion.
All right, thank you so much, Joseph. And I just want to, say also that I'm really excited about the County Commission releasing this 30-day comment period, and for our opportunity to review this plan and think about our alignments and, the various subgroups and mission areas that each of us are working on. I think this is such a great opportunity for the county, and anything that we can do to lift up and promote that work of that commission, I know will, come back to all the support for PGCPS. So anything you can do to engage the community, engage your, if you live in a municipality, make sure your council members and mayor know about the plan and are thinking about your municipality. If you live in other parts of the county, that your county council members who may not have served on the plan, that they are thinking about it and taking the time to discuss it with the community. So anything we can do to help make it a success will just, come back and help us be successful. So I thank everyone for spending a little extra time on climate action through the county work. So today, moving into our main topic, I'm really excited to have Jamie Alston, our work group member, who's the Building Services Management Analyst, Energy Coordinator for PGCPS, and Michael Harris from Bowie State University, who are going to lead us through the next portion of our meeting on electricity and energy procurement. And of course, this is towards our commitment to clean energy schools by 2030, and then beyond, the goals beyond to 2040. So I'll hand it over now, and I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Board Member Boozer-Strother, and good afternoon to all.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. I think the first question that we had at hand for today was, how does Prince George's County Public Schools procure its electricity? And to answer that question, we have been procuring electricity through the Baltimore Regional Cooperative Purchasing Committee. Goes by an acronym of BRICPAC for many, many years now. And BRICPAC serves many school districts in our area, and they have an energy board that works diligently to research and assess energy market developments on an ongoing basis, while they also oversee energy cost management and procurement programs. So we ride the BRICPAC agreement literally. And when it's time for us to, when our period is up, currently we're still in a period, we last signed in September of 2019. good for us that with the help of Sam Stefanelli that we signed on right before the COVID-19 pandemic. And we sit and we decide what would be the best option for us in terms of writing that agreement, in terms of years. Do we want to, select 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? So that's how we've been doing it for the past several years. And what helps us with the group purchasing agreement is that they're already out there testing the waters, if you will. Again, as I said, assessing, researching energy markets, so that we'll be best informed in terms of what decisions to be made. And it also helps to release us from the time that is necessary to commit to coming up with what we want to do as it relates to not only electricity, but also natural gas. So that's the answer to that question in terms of how we procure our electricity. Moving over to solar, we were successful in partnering with Prince George's County Government's Office of Sustainable Energy, along with PHI and Exelon. It started about 2016, and we were successful in getting 3 rooftop solar voltaic units, and they are at Glen Arden Woods Elementary, Greenbelt Middle School, and Oxon Hill High School. Construction began again before the pandemic, the summer of 2019. And we are engaged in those, and we hope to have the students also engaged with curricula very, very soon. Those are the contributions that I have. I know that Sam is going to be on at some point, and I don't want to steal the thunder from him in terms of presenting more information, but I'm happy to share over to Mr. Harris until the time comes for Sam to share any information that he has for today.
Yeah, that sounds good. Mr. Harris, let's happy to move into your presentation. Then when Sam joins us, we can continue.
To the panel, Sam, this is Sam. I'm here, but we lost the internet in our building, so I don't really have the ability to do anything but listen and talk. So I would just think at this time it's probably best just to move on to Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Stefanelli. Thanks for letting us know that's you on the phone. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Did we lose Michael?
I think he's muted.
We can see.
I'm sorry,
Right,
I didn't
great.
realize I was muted. So I want to know, are you seeing the presenter screen or the presentation screen? Because I will have to switch it. I don't know until you tell me.
We
The one I
probably
do-
see presenter.
Okay,
We see
so,
2 screens, so we see. I think we see your next slide.
okay, so that's presenter. Okay, so now you're seeing the full screen.
Yes, looks good. Thank you.
Okay. And I mean, let me preamble that I did this, as I mentioned in the group meeting last week, with as much information I gathered from our meetings and from what I can basically, go online and find. And so a lot of what I recommend or what I show here has probably been done already. I mean, even based on what Jenny was saying, we've been working with, since 2016 on this. So please take this for what it is. I start off by saying an overview of of what this, I understood it to be all about, to prepare these recommendations, and looked at the guiding principles from that were presented at the beginning, which says it should be feasible and actionable, 5-year window of implementation, which is a short window, bold and ambitious, evidence-based and impactful. This goal I have of Prince George's County overall, again, I got online, I don't know if that's the goal, that is to reduce by 80%, between now and 2050. And the contribution of the county is supposed to be a 20% reduction of the contribution with about go to the 20% of county government demand with distributed renewable energy generation by 2022. Again, some of this, I don't know if those numbers are correct, but I'm going on the information that I went online and collect. And then I said also, to help grant recipients achieve 10% energy savings for solar projects. And the reason I mentioned that, even with our projects that we did here at Bowie State University, they were supported by grants that we got through the Maryland Energy Administration. They were not big grants, but the cost of electricity is so competitive that even if you shave 0.5% off of the cost by getting grant support, it helps significantly. This, I'm kind of preaching to the choir, but this was like an overview of why, solar power, and it talks about the overall installation of solar power now in the US, which is about 97 gigawatts. And I see there enough to power 18.4 million homes, etc. Solar contributes less than 3% of electrical capacity. Even though it's 3% of electrical capacity, it's actually only 0.1% of electricity generation, because, as you know, with solar, the capacity factor of solar is not that high. But still, 3% overall is significant. You see there where it has generated throughout the US, it has generated approximately 230,000 jobs, actually more than presently offered by the coal industry. Some of the main reasons I have there, about positive impact on environment, financial benefits now and in the future, and basically it serves as a hedge against uncertainty of the market in which we are. The US solar energy landscape. Again, it kind of summarizes some of the information I just said on that slide with the 97 megawatts. Maryland actually has 1,000 megawatts installed. The majority, 60% of it are actually utility grade installations, and and then a lot of rooftops and other forms. Economic impact, again, 30,000 jobs, $25 billion of private investment, and the reason that apart from the fact that the cost of panels, solar panels are reducing a lot. When you have this kind of capacity, and the cost per unit actually, is reduced significantly, which is why solar is becoming more and more competitive. And some of the environmental benefits there, based on the installation right now, power 18.4 million homes, 175,000 tons of carbon offset, 4.85 million gallons of gas, 11 million trees saved. So that was just a general overview. Like I said, a lot of this information is general, and you probably all know this. Then I move into what I think would be an action plan in terms of goals to really embark on this endeavor. And the first thing I have there, again, is about reviewing all studies already completed that identify potential of green energy within, PGCPS. I said this, and I'm sure studies have been, and I'm sure, Jamie, those studies probably have been done. We probably should have studies that are not too old, look at what recommendations from the studies have been enacted, and determine what parameters have changed since it was completed. For goal 2, I say determine the extent of green solar energy already deployed. Jamie touched on that. And last week when we spoke, Jamie, you mentioned you talked about procurement. I don't know how the procurement is done within the county, but that would have to be looked. See if it is grant supported, and then the types that have been used, whether roofs, parking canopies, ground mounted. Then overall, to assemble the physical data for PG CPS sites, and some of that data actually I had, was shared with me, and you'll see later down on my slides how I tried to use that data, just using some metrics that I know about. So solar energy. So the data to include roof areas, roof age, available parking lots for potential solar canopies, real estate for potential ground mount arrays. On the schools that I used as a sample that you see later in the slide, and again, I went on Google Maps as best to look at roofs and sites and so on that where potential existed. And then number 4, the PGCPS master plan for schools, and that probably should have been number 1 here rather than number 4, because there's no sense, talking about potential roofs if the schools are there to be either demolished or renovated or expanded and so on. So all that information would have to be gathered. Then how do you maximize the potential of the solar energy at those sites? Identify facilities that present the best opportunities for feasible size installations, because generally we probably should not look at a roof that could produce less than 100 kilowatts. I mean, I think that is a kind of a rough guideline that uses is not usually economical for smaller installations than that. And then prioritize the sites that you can provide combinations of installations to defray costs. What I mean by, like, when we did our first solar here project on campus, we had a mix of a roof, a solar canopy, and a ground mount. The solar canopies are quite expensive, but you could, kind of offset the cost by having a ground mount and having a roof. So when you look at the combined cost, again, it's reduced. The 5th, I say, identify funding sources to alleviate cost impact. Seeking federal and state grant opportunities, private sector support, and even, if possible, utility company support. And lastly, I have to identify economic opportunities related to project development, including labor force development, the prioritization of partnerships between the large developers and smaller local companies, because you want just that, local economic impact in terms of labor, in terms of, there are a lot of small providers out there who can joint venture with the bigger providers, smaller providers who are within the county. Then, work with the Maryland Department of Labor to do the same, and then identify training opportunities. This here, what I did is, from the information that was shared with me with school data, I went and I got, I think, maybe about 20 schools where I got the gross roof area, I got the age of the roofs, looked at, as I said, Google Maps, looked at the parking lots for potential, looked at sites for potential, and then based on a metric, generally, I use about 3 acres per megawatt. So based on that roof, the gross roof areas, I looked at, for those schools that I have here, what potentially can, and this is just as you see for roofs, because I don't know enough yet about the parking lots or the sites, and came up with some numbers for potential for solar generation. Then the ones highlighted, of course, in green are the newer roofs that were shown on that site, and that is why I have below what can, if possible, be an immediate project, and that is about 4 megawatts or 4,030 kilowatts. The marginal, those that are maybe the roofs are up to, I think up to 11 years old, which might be pushing the envelope a bit, because these power purchase agreements generally are about, about 20. About 20 years, sometimes 25 years if you really want to defray the cost. And then, most of them, as you see, are the orange, which are really old roofs. Probably oldest, probably, you know, some of them are probably older schools up for renovation again, I don't know. But this was just meant to be, just like it says, based on this sample, you know, 80 megawatts of potential solar power. Well, you know, you have hundreds of schools in the county, and so obviously it would require deeper study. And then I have here some recommendations, which you probably, you know, based again on what Jamie said, you know, you're probably, you know, there are energy teams, which would include PGCPS, county officials, students, which is, you know, you look at the action plan, you know, education of the state and county officials on the advantages, etc. And then provide the recommendations, you know, on the purchase of the green power. And then I have a procurement of consultant team to develop on-site plan and power purchasing strategy, because this is so large an undertaking that, I mean, to get deeper study, you will require, you know, consultant help to really put it together and prioritize and decide, you know, develop strategies for implementing. So overall, you know, under the recommendations here, have increase on-site renewable energy, purchase green power from utility. Right, this is another point, because to really make that impact in reduction, it's going to be hard to do it just from on-site. On-site is good because for one, it you know, I mean, apart from being good optics, it could be a teaching tool. You know, the students could be involved. A lot of possibilities for on-site, and you know, it shows good faith. But to really make up, to me, a big dent in the purchase of, you know, green power, really probably gonna have to, you know, piggyback with, you know, with large utility grade projects, having dedicated power, you know, power that you purchase from them. Have research availability of collaborative projects, you know, is another recommendation. Then, you know, this has to go along with projects to maximize facilities energy performance. There's no sense doing all of this and then the buildings are really not efficient buildings. You want to reduce the use. I mean, we heard about that from Don last meeting about what they're doing. And then the US EPA Green Power Partnership actually is a good partnership in terms of a lot of other help. You know, there's a lot of history there, and that partnership could actually inform what we're trying to do. The last slide is just a shameless plug. What we've done at Bowie State, which shows, you know, 2 of the canopies that we've installed and 2 of the rooftop units. We have about 2.3 megawatts now installed on the campus, and this has been installed by different people, different developers over the years. So that summarizes what I worked on.
Yeah, thank you so much. So many great points to think about, and of course, you're making us realize some of these intersections of where we run into some barriers to think about, and how many different decision makers there needs to be as we select the right buildings. And I love seeing the parking lot canopies, because we do know that on some of these large lands for high school that we do not have the roofs probably quite ready. So thank you so much for bringing in those options. And Jamie, do you want to kick off some questions or take questions at this point?
She's muted.
Muted.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Actually, Sam and I had some slides And it actually kind of picks up a little bit of the electricity and the solar. And I wanted to at least share that so that you could kind of see what we have done at Prince George's County Public Schools to date. And then maybe there may be some questions from that as well. Let me see, hopefully I can be successful in sharing my screen. Let's see. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
Seems like it's still, there it
Yes.
is.
Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna, hopefully I can. Okay, let's go back. Okay, so our mission within building services, let's see if I can move this over a little bit, is to deliver prompt and emergency responsive service, facility inspection compliance, and maintenance services to facility occupants. And our team, staff, we strive to provide students and staff in the community with safe and comfortable and nurturing academic environments. I mentioned about our electricity procurement. I mentioned the Brick Pack Agreement. That's the acronym, but you can see it actually in writing. The Baltimore Regional Cooperative Purchasing Committee, which I stated had an energy board that does all the research, and they assess the energy market developments on an ongoing basis, while also overseeing energy cost management and procurement programs. I mentioned our solar projects. These three together come close to about 1 megawatt that we have in operation currently. We have a slide for Glen Arden Woods Elementary School that actually shows you that rooftop PV system, as well as we have a dashboard that students will be able to utilize with the curriculum team when they are up and running and ready to incorporate it into curriculum. The dashboard features a lot of the carbon footprint reduction data that we like to focus upon in terms of, what is the benefit of this rooftop unit? How is it serving us best? What is it eliminating? For Glen Arden Woods Elementary School, you can see it's comparable to about a little over 4,000 trees that have been planted. It's saving over 119 gallons of water and 239 kilowatts. Sorry, my screen is a little bit hidden, but megawatts of energy. And then for gas, we're saving about almost 19,000 gallons of gas. And so these boards will be in the foyers of the schools. Currently at Glen Arden Woods Elementary School, they have a dashboard that allows the students to just look at the lead points for the school, such as the geothermal. They can see how much energy is being used, how much water is being used at that site. But next to that board, we will have the solar PV data that the students can utilize, and they can learn from and just see what's actually, get engaged in what's happening at their school. When it comes to electricity, and this may come up a little bit later, but Dawn talked about the projects that we have done, the ones that are in sync for us to pursue next. And the low-hanging fruit is always the lighting. So we have taken advantage of the Empower Maryland program opportunities to allow us to at least shave off a little of the electricity bills at our facilities. To date, we've had 9 partial retrofit projects, 28 full retrofit projects. We just had Central High School open for this school year. So it actually, we utilize some of those Empower Maryland benefits or rebate incentives for that project. We've had 5 bus lots. And when you think about this lighting, you have to really expand it out for a lot of different things. One, you're saving costs, you're reducing your carbon footprint. The other thing you're doing is you're boosting up safety. For a lot of our bus drivers, how dark it is now at 6 a.m. and when they come to work, Many of them just were appreciative of the fact of what we did at Douglas Bus Lot, because many of them talked about what it was like walking in the dark and trying to just get to their bus. So we're happy to hear. We've had custodians at Charles Flowers High School speak about, wow, now we can see how to get the trash up after the games at night, because the LED lighting has a greater lumen intensity to allow for not only the safety, but also just bode that sense of security around our facilities. You think about the Friday night games that we had, and when students are there, they're waiting for their rides to come and pick them up. Having that LED lighting there really gave them a sense of safety and security. We've had some of our garages for many of our building services team that work on our buses and facility. It helps them to be able to see better. We had one person in food services when we retrofitted facilities administration building. She was getting ready to retire, and she said, "Oh my goodness, wow, you're retrofitting right at retirement." And she was just appreciative of being able to have a greater light to be able to see during the day. We Meadowbrook Elementary School in Bowie, we utilized that space this year, and Sam, he was thinking about, how can we make this school, best to receive our students. And he said, let's retrofit the lighting there. And so we were able to get the lighting retrofitted at Meadowbrook before this school year. We did that with the Empower Maryland rebate incentives. You see a before picture and an after picture. A lot of times students don't have that opportunity to maybe attend a brand new school, but when you put paint on lockers, or when you change the lighting, it just changes the mood and the atmosphere for those students when they enter in. Same thing happened over at Nicholas Orem Middle School a few years ago. We went there and changed the lighting, and it was like a brand new facility for those students coming in and the staff. We've been talking about what retrofits can do for us. And so we're grateful for these Empower Maryland rebate incentives that allow us to be able to do these projects. And so when I mentioned all of the schools that we have retrofitted thus far, that has been at no expense to us as a school system. And that is because Empower Maryland is a line item on all Maryland utilities. So state of Maryland, that would be your gas, your natural gas. That would be whether you are in SMECO territory, which is Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative, whether you're in Baltimore Gas and Electric territory, whether you're in PEPCO territory. We've been able to take advantage of those rebate incentives and just utilize them to not only retrofit our lighting, but also when we have these projects coming up for new chillers, for kitchen equipment and the like, these rebate incentives has helped us. And again, when we put in a more energy efficient HVAC system, it's ultimately going to impact our reduction in electricity. This is some data in terms of where we are to date with Empower Maryland. This comes strictly from them, and this is for just PEPCO alone in terms of the graphics, but the actual yellow highlighted information represents all utilities. So we've got over 2,200 megawatt hours saved. Over 1.1 million has been awarded in incentives. And if you look at the pie chart, the green area represents all that we have done with lighting thus far. We've got 67% of those Empower Maryland rebate incentives have gone right back into lighting retrofits. We are fortunate to have been able to participate in training during COVID. A lot of companies took the opportunity to allow online trainings, and we were able to participate in facilities training, building tune-up trainings, and really great. We've got instant rebate, instant discounts, such as we can go and to any electric shop, qualifying electric shop, your Shepherd Electrics and others. And as long as we display to them what school we are representing, we can get and qualify for an instant rebate. In addition to that, we have used our rebate incentives again for chillers, for water heaters, gas water heaters, gas powered boilers. We've used it for kitchen fryers. Crossland High School had a culinary arts upgrade several years ago, and we were able to use those rebate incentives to fully retrofit some of the equipment there in that facility. And when you look at the information here, you can see all of the carbon footprint reductions listed here in terms of these Maryland rebate incentives. Dashboards. I think one of the questions that was asked in terms of, how do we monitor our energy management? We've got a great team down at Facility Service Base. Our BAS technicians, Jason and our HVAC team, it's almost like a station when you go there. They have dashboards displayed that can give temperatures, what's happening at our individual facilities. And then we're fortunate to be able to have a dashboard system at Fairmont Heights High School and also at Glen Arden Woods Elementary. So this is real-time data. What you see displayed here, going back to electricity, we could pull up electricity, natural gas, rainwater harvesting, regular water in gallons. We also can pull up our geothermal data here. And you see here what we produced at 12 noon today. We were at 192 kilowatts of electricity that was used. So this is helpful in that we need real-time data so we can identify anomalies, as well as it's good to be able to track against utility bills when they come in. And that's that data that we have with Sam and the rest of the team from building services. And happy to entertain any questions and throw questions out. Just to let you know, when we went through our solar project here, it's a lot of time and effort that's developed. We had members of the full team walking roofs to identify, as Mr. Harris had said, look at the age of the roof, which is very important. Look at the roof warranty. We learned a lot through this process. There are different parts of the roof that have different warranties, such as some of the coatings. Some of the coatings may eat away because of the ultraviolet rays. And then you have other portions that may be under warranty at a different time period than that coating. So all of this comes into play in terms of the rooftop solar voltaic systems that are applied to our roof. So it's a lot of time, but it's really for us, it's nice to see the project full circle from the beginning to see what is delivered at the end. And we're looking forward to the students really getting fully engaged, and even more opportunities such as ground solar systems, as well as any canopies that we may be able to have in the future here at Prince George's County Public Schools. Thank you, and happy to receive any questions and throw questions out.
Jamie, before you move on, I just wanted to say Glen Arden Woods is the prime example of how this should be done. That was done as part of a renovation package. So as Mr. Harris said, we went in, made the facility more energy efficient, put in energy efficient equipment, and added the solar panels to create our own electricity. That's the type of project that, as opposed to just strapping solar panels on an existing building, a building like Glen Arden Woods is what we should be striving for. As we do renovations, we replace the roof, make sure the roof can sustain the solar panels before we even start to add that equipment to the facility. And the equipment in the facility uses less energy as well. So it's a complete package to help reduce our carbon footprint.
Thank you,
the parking canopies proves to be very popular because people fight to get under the canopy because you're protected from the weather elements. So there's an additional benefit of the canopy. And generally the projects too with the canopy, they come with the LED lighting. So whereas one of the parking lot projects I did, we were building the lot parallel with doing the canopy. Normally I would have had to pay for the lights, separately, but the lighting package was included with the canopy package, which when you look at that cost, the cost was not as high, but per kilowatt hour when you thought that you got lighting too.
Mr. Harris, for your project at Bowie State, how long can you walk us through how long it took for your projects there? And did you have a team that worked with you?
Well, I didn't have a team per se. Jabari's on the call, but I don't know if he's still on. But he's part of our C4, which is the climate committee and so on. But generally, no, there were 3 different projects. The first one, which we did, which had 2 rooftops, 1 solar canopy and a ground mount. That was done through, through a procurement whereby actually College Park had pre-qualified some solar vendors that, through their process. And what I did is created our RFP and without, having to put out a general RFP, it was targeted towards the people who were like shortlisted or pre-qualified to do it. So that was how the first one was done. I mean, I had, kind of identified the roofs, based on some of the parameters that I said there. I knew that we had a parking lot that was very eligible, and we had a big ground mount area that was near our football field. I run into some. It used to be used for some tailgating, so I had a little fight with the people from athletics, but I was able to convince them that we only have 4 home games a year, and whereas we produce electricity all year if we have this site. But that was sort of the second one actually was, you mentioned Exelon, and I think with that Exelon takeover, there was a requirement that they had to install a certain amount of solar in the county. And so they came to us. I didn't go to them. They came to us, and their price actually, because of that program, was very competitive. But they were 2 smaller roofs. They were not big projects. And the third one, again, I put out another RFP for that canopy, which is actually that canopy alone is about 1 megawatt. And we were building a new parking lot. And so parallel with building the parking lot, I had the canopy built. And they were all the, again, through these power purchase agreements. One thing I had to convince, when I was first talking about doing it on campus, I had to convince, when I was first told, well, we don't have money, no, you don't have to have the money up front, you don't have the capital, you're paying for the electricity as you purchase it. What you want is to be, you want a competitive price. Jimmy, you talked about how you purchase. Actually, the purchasing for I think all state facilities is actually done through College Park, and they have all these consultants, and they do all that research that you mentioned, and they have these reverse auctions every couple of years, and so it's a big block. So the prices are very competitive. So if you just look at price alone, it's sometimes it's difficult to justify, but it's amazing how, as years pass, because all these projects were done over a span of about 3 or 4 years, that the price kept, reducing and reducing what they can offer. And, the other piece of it is whether we would own the solar RECs or, the solar RECs or not. Solar, that market, fluctuates up and down. And earlier on, it was not worth keeping it. But for the last canopy we did, we actually owned the solar RECs. If you don't own the solar RECs, then the price is, the price is a little less. But it's good if you can have, count the solar RECs that you're getting from the project.
Thank you. I think Mr. Goldberg has a question.
I do, but first I would like to compliment Michael and Jamie on this is just great work. I think Riley also in the chat complimented the work that you've done. It looks just tremendously labor intensive to me. And, one thing I have been wondering about recently is, how much, well, let me go at it this way. We have 24 school districts in Maryland, and I looked online this morning to see how many there are in the just in the country, and there's about 131,000 school districts. And it seems, this may be wrong, and this is part of my question, but it seems like, every school district is kind of a pioneer. You're figuring this stuff out as you go along. But there are a lot of school districts that are doing this, and some of them, I think, have, gone ahead and, more quickly than Maryland has, particularly maybe on the West Coast. So I'm wondering, how much of an ability we have to learn from all the other school districts, their mistakes and their successes, and to what extent are we developing, it seems to me school districts are not that dissimilar, so that we may be able at some point to almost have a handbook, that gives you a step-by-step manual for how to do all these things. And, it might save a lot of time and trouble in the long run. I don't know that we have that now. Riley probably knows much more about this than any of us. Certainly than I do. So I'm going to put that question to her when it's her turn to speak. But again, I really, really want to be, clear. I sincerely admire what the district has done so far. Same with Bowie State.
Mr. Goldberg, you raise an excellent question, and it's always great when even persons that serve in the similar role as I in different districts, it's fabulous when we can get together. I know ASBO is coming up this coming Friday, its annual fall convention, and venues like that really lend themselves helpful for us to collaborate, because you're right, we're all doing the same work. We shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel, if you will. And interestingly enough, I just received a request about 3 weeks ago from Montgomery County because they want to know how did we, even though they had solar before we did, but now they're coming up again on a new cycle. And so they want to know how was our experience with these 3 schools. And so it should be a sharing, and it is a lot of work. And we many times don't have we have a skeletal crew. So hopefully we can get to the point, maybe, as you said, Raleigh, have suggestions of how we can kind of come up with a template or a handbook, and even more purchasing vehicles such as BrickPack that will allow us to do more of this work without the time and effort that's required through RFPs. And hopefully we will have, I think down in Alachua County, they actually have businesses, that's in Florida, that actually want to pursue rooftop solar for those schools. They just want to be able to advertise their business, and they do it actually at no cost. But that's in a different, Hillsborough County, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So you're absolutely right. We should have something out there.
Yeah, and that's in the recommendations. I guess that's the collaborative piece I talked about. Obviously, it takes a lot of work. And within Maryland with the school districts, kind of everybody's doing this, trying, striving for the same goal. It makes a lot of sense. The other point is that, Maryland, the renewable portfolio standard, with all these utility grade projects going on, we really need to take advantage of them when they exist, because there's but so much solar that within the state of Maryland that you can do based on the portfolio standard. Right now, I think the goal is 30% or 40% by 20, to increase it to 30 or 40% by 2030. So you could almost start competing to purchase, green power, within the state by school districts. But like, my point is that it really, to make a big dent, in these goals, you really have to do both. You have to do them, on site, and you have to get into these, purchase agreements. And that is, another reason to why we should be working together.
So at this point, we think we have to move on to the next presentation from Donald and Riley, who will be talking a little bit more about energy use and retrofits. After that, we'll try and get through some of the questions. We apparently do not have to be off right at 5 o'clock today. So keep putting your questions in the chat. But I wanted to turn it over to, I guess, Donald Goldberg first to introduce.
I would like to yield my time to Riley because she has way more expertise than I do. We have been, CLPP has been learning, just like you all have, about, how to go about this, what the opportunities are. I'm sure, there are companies out there called energy service companies that some companies will come in and take over the entire job, and often one company I'm aware of will take over your energy bills. They'll guarantee you a lower energy rate. They will bill you and they will pay the utilities and they will do the retrofit and they pay the cost. They have communicated to me that from their point of view, the older the building is, the better. The more they can come in and save for the building owner, and the more profit there is for them. So that's all I'm going to say. There are great things out there. We've got to learn about them, and we're trying to do that. And we'll keep you all posted as we obtain more information. So with that, I turn it over to Riley.
I do not have a presentation like last time. I would sort of rather use this time for your questions, and then I have a series of questions that I was posed in an email. So I'm going to try and answer those for you all and rephrase them, and then just kind of turn it over to you guys for questions about retrofits or anything else, because retrofits, people always ask me about them, and I really wish I had a very quick answer to be like, here is the silver bullet that like solves all the retrofit problems, but that unfortunately does not exist. New construction, that does kind of exist, but for retrofits, it is trickier, and it depends on a lot of what you were talking about with like roof, the status of your roofs or solar capability, or there are trees in the way, what's going on in the actual building itself. Donald is completely correct that a lot of times your best choice or your best ability to save is on these really, really old buildings, because there are so many opportunities. I loved seeing that there's been a bunch of LED lighting retrofits. One of the questions I was asked is, what is the most cost-effective approach to a retrofit? Lighting is always your like low cost, low hanging fruit. You guys, I'm sure all know that. And depending on where you guys are in your process and in your buildings, the Better Buildings Challenge and then the Better Buildings Program and the Department of Energy can be a really great resource and a governmental resource that can either help you find some more incentives or can really help you identify what is the best option for your retrofit project. That also kind of makes it a little bit more cost effective. And it just really depends on where each of your projects are. A lot of school districts in the Northeast, I talked to a gentleman named Paul Torsellini from the National Renewable Energy Lab this morning because he lives in the Northeast and I wanted his Northeast instead of West perspective. And he said there are quite a few school districts engaging with MEP firms, with engineering firms that are writing these roadmaps. And that's kind of what I talked about on my last one. It was a little bit more new construction focused, but it's setting a goal so that each time you have a retrofit project that comes up, you're striving towards saving a certain amount of energy and thus carbon within that project. And that's really kind of your North Star. So that's sort of to answer that first question. I'm just going to pull up what the other ones were. Donald mentioned energy services companies, ESCOs, and if there are different approaches to managing energy use in buildings. ESCOs are a great option. Several years ago, when I first started in schools, a lot of the ESCOs were still kind of working on their models. And so a lot of school districts, ultimately, we refer to it a little flippantly as they got a little bit burned by energy services companies. But since then, the model has been really dialed in. And I think it's actually a very effective choice for a lot of school districts, because then you have someone, as he said, helping you through every step of the way. And they really want to get into the like nitty gritty of your building. In-house, it can be tricky. You clearly have a very robust team. And I'm just like so impressed with all the things I've seen here. But, you know, if you're going to manage your energy in-house, this can be very dependent on the expertise of, you know, your staff and the types of the systems used. We're seeing a lot now, especially because there was a big frantic early movement in things like net zero, but now we're really starting to understand what these buildings are supposed to look like. So many schools ended up with systems they might not be able to maintain because they either don't have the staff or the budget to maintain them. And they were given these systems that was like, you'll figure it out. But as we know, staff are always overburdened and don't have enough time to take care of things. So that way, schools end up having to pay money outside to get contractors to help keep those systems running. So really, it's all about talking to your retrofit team or your internal teams, everyone. I see a lot about community engagement here, so that's a great one, your internal community, to figure out sort of where everyone is so that you can put in a system or even just utilize an existing system, but do it a little bit more efficiently. We like to see the system specified and used should always match the expertise that the school district is willing to use. There was one, this one is an interesting case study, but for example, there's a small district I'm working with, and they're using programmable thermostats in each classroom, which we don't always advise, but it was because everyone knew how to use them. And it's such a simple system that while it's not, you know, like the top of the shelf, most optimal for energy savings, it still gets them about 80% of the way there, which is still a very high number. And we know it works, so they don't have to continue to pull in outside help. However, if you're going for that deeper retrofit, I highly do recommend pulling in outside help, whether it's a RFP for an engineering firm or if it's an energy services company. Oh, I am being called. I'm gonna turn that off. Why don't I stop there? Oh, actually, I did want to say one real quick thing about, there was one quick question about swapping out existing fuel boilers for heat pumps. And the big question there, again, no silver bullet, is that it depends on what you have. There are a couple of webinars that I'll put in the chat. I have to find them to sort of help understand the heat pump solutions. There's a lot of low carbon pilot projects that are happening, and heat pumps are becoming, especially in the Northeast. It's actually really interesting. Although we think of California as like heat pump central, there's a ton of heat pump work being done in the Northeast and especially in New York. And there's a low carbon, like I said, low carbon pilot project that's happening with DOE. And so they're really starting to be able to say like a 1-for-1 exchange in those gas boiler to heat pumps. And it really is just your smarter, your carbon efficient choice to, when your system is done, when it's hit that lifespan and it's done, to already have planned for that heat pump removal. If your system is going to go out in 2 years, you've got 2 years to figure it out. If it's going to go out in 10 years, you've got 10 years to figure it out. It's a little bit the same for the roof, where you should be considering what you should be doing with your roof instead of just making it so that you can have solar on it, which is very important, but also making sure that it's insulated, because that's your opportunity to touch that envelope. I have another question here about batteries, but I will see if anyone has any other retrofit questions, because my battery answer is not great.
Actually, I have a question, and this is not just for you, Riley. This is also for Jamie and Michael and anybody else that has been working in this space. One thing we often, particularly with LEDs, well, I mean, we've talked a little bit about the maintenance issue, and I don't recall who said this, but somebody, I think it was in our group, said that in their experience, heat pumps may not last as long as the old-fashioned boilers that we're used to. I don't know much about that, but I wanted to ask, sort of on the lighting side, if you've seen any big gain in maintenance or lack of maintenance from the LEDs, because I just think, I mean, even in my own house, every time a light bulb goes out, I have to get up on a ladder. It is really a pain. And I would imagine when you're dealing with 10, 12-foot, ceilings, that for your maintenance crew, that must be a real annoyance. But you have LEDs that are supposed to last 20 years or more. So that should save a lot of work, I would hope.
You ask another great question, Mr. Goldberg, and I know Mr. Taylor may be on as well from our and
Jamie,
Sam
I
as
can
well.
take this.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right. We use fluorescent tubes throughout the school system as normal practice. And our custodians were spending at least 1 hour per week changing light bulbs. And that's in 200 schools, so that's 200 hours per week. That goes away with LED lights because there's a tremendous labor savings. And I can just tell you a story about Wise High School's gymnasium. When they built that school, they built it with a 5,000 seat gymnasium that has 80-foot ceilings. And the lights are about 60 to 70 foot in the air. The problem is you cannot put a lift on a gym floor that will go 70 feet in the air because it weighs too much. So every time I needed to change the light bulbs, I had to hire a company to come in and build a scaffolding 70 feet in the air. It cost me anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 just to change the light, just to get the scaffolding in place to change the light bulbs in that gym. And I think for like $32,000, we were able to retrofit LED lights in that gym to stop that about 5 years ago. It's already paid for itself, just in the labor savings alone. And we're doing that in a lot of our gyms, our parking lots, because there's a big savings on the equipment costs for boom lift trucks, the equipment costs for lifts to go in the building, and of course the labor cost. And as Jamie talked about the parking lots, LED lights are much more focused light. So we're able to put more light in our parking lot without it bleeding off to our neighbors, which is a problem for us because the people that live adjacent to the schools don't want someone's parking lot lights shining in their window all night. So we can make our parking lots brighter without interfering with the neighbors by using LED lights because they stay so focused and they're condensed within our space as opposed to bleeding out. There's a lot of benefits to using LED lights, and labor savings is one of them.
Thanks.
I'm going to ask the next question if that's okay. And then I know Delegate Lehman had a question in the chat that we'll get to after that. And then everyone else should put their hands up. The question I had, I guess this is probably more for Ms. Alston, is back to BRICPAC. Are they considering doing all 100% renewable electricity purchasing in the near future? And also, what is their relationship with the PSC? Like, do they have to get approval from the PSC to make changes?
I am not sure if BRICPAC, what their relationship is with the PSC, but they do take in consideration renewables for electricity, as well as renewables for natural gas. And their 2020 annual report is available on their website, and it kind of gives a full exhaustive review of what they did, even during pandemic. So I can maybe post the link in the chat session for anyone that would like to review it, but I'm sorry I can't answer your question about the PSC.
No worries. Thank you on that. And Delegate Lehman's question was when I guess it was about how if there's any competitive grants as well that can be used as a funding source for these projects.
Was that a question for me?
I think it was originally for you and Mr. Harris on the solar projects when it was asked, but I'm sure it also can apply to retrofits too.
Mr. Harris, I know that there are some grants that are available, and they have deadlines and time has to be taken to apply for them and to submit them. You may be able to talk a little bit more about any that you have participated in. I have not participated in a grant submission as of yet.
Yeah, I think I mentioned early for two of the projects. For each of them, we got $150,000 grant each from Maryland Energy Administration. And you're perfectly right. I think annually they have maybe $1 million, $2 million, and it's really first come first serve basis. And so it's not there's a lot out there, but I actually had some help in doing the grant application with the solar developer who has done a lot of projects. So he helped with a lot of the paperwork to get those grants. I don't know if Maryland Energy Administration or MEA in the future will be getting more money, but you really have to get in line early to take advantage of that grant. Yeah, and I had developed a relationship with the person who administers the grant, and the second project, you bend the rule a little bit so that I can get it.
And Mr. Jakuda, our P3 team actually may be looking into some of those grants as we speak. For the P3 and other schools that are forthcoming as they prepare them to be solar ready, as well as maybe Suitland High School and William Wirt Middle School, the new William Wirt.
And the one thing, Jamie, we could talk about is, as opposed to grants, there are a lot of tax incentives that are given to individuals for purchasing certain types of equipment, energy efficient equipment, that the school system itself can't take advantage of because we don't pay taxes. Mm-hmm. However, we've been looking for a way to allow the company to take advantage of the tax incentives or sell the tax incentives, so we can benefit from the tax incentive even though we do not actually pay taxes. That's one of the things that is really, there's a lot of tax incentives and a lot of money available through those programs that we're not able to take advantage of because we do not pay taxes, and we're not sure of the vehicle to use to allow one of our vendors to take advantage of the tax incentive.
Yeah, well, in fact, the only thing that makes these products competitive is the federal, the tax credit is too, and then the way that they handle it, the accelerated depreciation. So without those two vehicles, the cost would really be even higher. Now, at one time, the tax credit was going to expire at the end of last year. I think I'm not sure. I don't know if it has been extended, but there was a lot of angst in the industry when the credit was going to expire. The credit was going to expire. The federal government puts was putting a sort of timeline on it because they figured that with more and more efficient projects they can phase out the tax credit. The accelerated depreciation also help with upfront costs. So yes, but those, like you said, the private developers, they're the ones that use it, that sell us the power to be able to sell us at a better rate using those tax incentives.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Okay, well, hearing none, I will ask another one then. I remember last time, Ms. Alston, you were talking about how I guess funds through demand response can possibly be used to deal with, I think, some of the issues that Mr. Stefanelli had brought up about budgets not lining up. And I'm wondering if the selling of solar RECs is something that is being considered at all, or can be used from these 3 new projects, and I guess any additional projects.
With respect to demand response, we have recently met with some of the companies to revisit demand response and what opportunities they could present to us as a school district. However, as Sam could attest, we have to ensure that, one, that we can respond accordingly to a call demand. Many of them have not had very many called demand events as of late when you speak with them, but also we'd have to make certain that that it is in line with our unions and employees when we curtail back. So that's pretty much where we are with demand response, but we're going to be submitting at least about 15 schools, particularly high schools, to see what we could perhaps glean from participating in a demand response event. And those would typically be in your hotter months like July and August. And so, for 12-month employees that work year round, and in July and August, it gets pretty hot. And so hopefully it will be just a small change in the thermostat or the building automation system setting or set points that will still allow for comfort in the workplace. Also, we have to take in consideration when COVID, as Sam and Dawn and our team can speak about, we had fresh air requirements. So we have to make sure that at least it still is in line with our current protocol, set points, and what we need to keep our buildings healthy, as well as our employees and team comfortable. With regards to the solar for our 3 existing schools, that's something that remains to be seen. It would be great if we could really generate offset and utilize it towards helping to defray costs from some of our larger retrofit projects. Hopefully I've satisfactorily answered your question.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, Ms. Loveland, would you maybe want to talk a little bit about what you wrote in the chat about batteries?
Sure. I didn't want to distract too much, but I was asked, so I wanted to make sure it got into this meeting. I was asked what the state of technology for backup batteries is, or for backup power. And I think I talked about this in the last meeting, or at least I hope I did, that when considering backup power too, you need to make sort of a list of the things that you actually would need to have backup battery for, or backup battery power for, like your critical needs, your critical process loads, things like that. I have a list that school districts typically use that I can pass on, but since this is not, I don't think this is a conversation you guys are having next week. It may just be tabled for a little while, but unfortunately, backup battery is still very expensive. There are some situations where utilities will subsidize them, or there are programs in place that can help subsidize them, which is great, especially for things like school districts or community buildings. The real issue, of course, is that most battery systems, since they're pretty nascent, are not certified for the backup requirements. And then, of course, what exactly are you dealing with in terms of a backup power outage, and how frequent? If you can't charge the battery, its lifetime is fairly short. So that's why it needs to be coupled with a big PV system or a small generator that can run really efficiently. This doesn't necessarily, although maybe it does apply to you all, but sometimes when I think of power outages in the Northeast, I think of like the far remote of Vermont. So it may not be too much of an issue for you all. You may have shorter power outages. But of course, this is not exactly where I need to go with this, but here we go. That electrification does make it a little bit harder, because these systems can be sized to run the critical loads, but may not be able to handle electric heating. So it's just kind of figuring out exactly what you would want it installed for. And it's very possible, I think in the next couple of years, it's much like what we saw with solar 3, 4, 5 years ago, where that seemed kind of expensive and slightly unattainable. And now it's very cost effective and much more attainable, that I think we'll see the same with battery very soon. And just understanding what you would need for your critical loads, and then coupling that with grid integration so that you might be able to shift loads and focus on the emergency services. It's a lot.
Thank you.
And I can say the school system, the only battery, emergency batteries we use are in individual lighting for the hallways that we use for specific amounts of time, because when you're using a battery backup as opposed to a generator, you have a time limit that you're going to be able to use that battery. It's only going to run that piece of equipment for a certain amount of time, whether it be 2 hours or 4 hours. If we end up with and we do every 5 or 6 years, we get one of those snowstorms that shuts us down for a week, and we may be out of power for a week. A generator, we can keep refueling and we can keep the critical systems operating. So we only rely on batteries for anything that we need for, let's say, building evacuation, that we know is going to be a short period of time. We get it done, and then if the batteries run out, there's no longer a need for them. I don't know that we've ever even considered batteries for trying to run our facilities for a longer period of time than a couple of hours.
And we're starting to see more of it. It's so nascent that, like you said, batteries are not exactly new, but they were used for very small loads. And now that we can couple them with PV, and then the potential for, load shifting and just more efficient and even passive house level system or passive house level building design, that's how we can make them a lot more viable for those critical loads. But, just proving that the fact that you guys have them for your lighting already is huge. I mean, you've already kind of like proven that they're possible at a small scale. Jamie, I see your comment in here about the lithium batteries allow for 6 minutes of storage while natural gas allows for 8 to 9 weeks. I have not heard that. That seems like a very wide range, and I can look into that. I am sort of doubtful. I would love to know where that came from, though, so I can track it down and figure it out. Yeah, let's talk about that one.
Can I just put in a mention here for electric school buses, because I think there is a clear role for them to play. I don't know exactly how that is going to work out. I think there's still a lot of thinking going into how electric school buses can support schools, as a possible source of battery backup. But the whole question of, integrating schools, buildings, their solar equipment with the grid, and integrating electric buses with the grid, and being able to send power in both directions, from the bus to the school, from the school to the grid, from the bus to the grid. Now, I know we're going to be talking about transportation next week, so I'm not going to go on and on about this, but I just want to flag that we are going to have, for certain, an electric vehicle bus bill in the next session of the General Assembly. It very well may be the one that we had this year, introduced by Delegate Fraser Hidalgo, or it may be something different. I know Senator Pinsky is thinking about this. I have to say this, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't. We didn't get that bill last year because PG County wasn't on board. Frankly, your delegation kind of put the kibosh on it. And, I think there's got to be some analysis that, clarifies the issue, because the concerns that they raised just didn't seem quite on the mark. I hope that, we can all send a message. I don't live in PG County, but that delegation needs to hear from its schools how important electric buses are to the whole plan going forward.
And I can say, from Prince George's County Schools' point of view, we are looking at electric buses. I know our transportation, I don't want to speak for our transportation department, but I know that they are looking at them. They actually have one sitting down at our at Central Garage as we speak, that we have, that we're testing at some level. The problem with, I understand what you're talking about. There are school systems that use the batteries and electric buses as emergency power for the schools. That works in some districts, because some districts actually park their school buses at the school. Their school is the bus lot. The bus drivers show up at the school, get on their bus, go pick up the kids, bring them back to the school, and they remain on that bus lot. We have a central office, 13 different bus lots where we store our buses. So when you talk about using electric buses and having to charge them overnight, the infrastructure required, it's not that we don't want to do it, the infrastructure required to charge 1,500 buses in 16 locations is astronomical. We have to make a major change to make that happen. It's not that we're not willing to do it, but it's a lot more thought has to go into our system than some of the smaller school systems that have 5 or 10 buses at each school, where the power is already there. All they have to do is put in the infrastructure to charge the buses, where we would have to increase the power to specifically to each lot in order to have the infrastructure available to charge the buses in a timely manner. But I do know our transportation department is looking into that, and they're serious about it. They're not just going through phases, because cost of fuel is directly associated with their budget. So when the cost of fuel gets up to $4 a gallon like it is now, it becomes cost effective to go to electric buses. So we are looking at that.
You can't see it, but I'm giving you a thumbs up on the screen.
Yeah, and the one thing we don't talk about, which bothers me about, is the law won't allow me to sell electricity. You can only be a power company to sell electricity. So if I put a charging station at one of my schools, I can buy electricity a lot cheaper than anybody else in the state of Maryland, because we're one of the heaviest users of electricity. If they would allow me to buy it at the level that I'm buying it at and sell it for a profit, I would have charging stations in every school, and I would be able to fund school programs. But we're not allowed to do that. We can only charge a user fee. And so if somewhere someone could decide that I could buy electricity and sell it for a profit, like a gas station does with gasoline and diesel fuel, that would drastically change the landscape for charging vehicles. Because I can tell you right now, I would start tomorrow installing charging stations at every school.
Well,
because
I
there's
just
a profit in it for the school system.
I would suggest that I think the next meeting is about transportation. I hope, we get into this issue in more detail, but this would be a great suggestion to bring to Delegate Fraser Hidalgo or Senator Pinsky. If they're going to write electric bus bills, I haven't heard that suggestion before, but it sounds eminently sensible to me. So, I think we ought to flesh that out a little bit and then have a talk with some of our legislators about getting to that.
Well, it is 5 o'clock now. I guess we probably should wrap it up for the day. I guess Board Member Boozer Strauser, would you like to take us out?
Yeah, thank you so much. As always, I have a lot of notes and learned a lot of new things, and I just want to thank everyone for your great information and for taking us through what it will take around the solar, through the presentations. Those were excellent. And I like that we made this connection to transportation and bus electrification as we look to our meeting on November 17th, where we'll have our transportation division leadership who will be with us. And, we'll definitely be able to make these links around the batteries. And I think that's, it's great that we're talking about this now, because it definitely sounds like a long-term issue around the economics and everything that was mentioned. And always so happy that Delegate Lehman is here to hear how the laws need to change to make this happen. There may need to be some significant disruption to meet these goals. And Delegate Lehman, we will join you in helping you lead on some of those new ideas. So with that, I just want to thank everyone again. And the survey, please keep promoting the survey. I would love to see some more students take the survey. So any reminders you could send out, please do. And we'll be in touch by email and convene in 2 weeks. Have a great evening.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.